did have the same topic, obviously, as the previous group, so trying to find a solution using tiny houses to relocate a tent city that occurred in an environment, being City Hall, and using government surplus land for that purpose. So I guess our focus was slightly different in that we were looking at a solution for transitional housing, so attaching it more to what are the real needs for the tent city community that we were needing to relocate. So then we, had a policy.
Yeah, so I'll start with the policy position and then we'll go to, we had a two-phase strategy and then kind of go through the design elements that we talked through about the placemaking and community itself. So the policy itself is a response to unintended occupation of the city. We've gone through that. A short-term use of lazy land, lazy government land, that ensures the land is still quarantined for long-term strategic outcomes. Community aspects that are easy to recreate and retain within new location, and community building activities. So definitely part of the site would be used for community building activities, which is permeable. So the community is a place where the community comes to as well as can move through, whilst making sure that it's safe and secure, without compromising tenant safety and privacy. So we, again, going through the different iterations, we started with one part of the policy being the temporary transitional housing of underutilised government land using tiny houses. So the solution is the transitional housing outcome, but in this instance we're using tiny houses which are fixed in terms of costs and that type of thing. And the second part that we're talking about is that then you could then translate that more broadly. So this would be the first part of it, which is immediate, and we obviously we've got implementation plan to achieve it. But then we'd also deal with the temporary transitional housing using a community subscription and a disbursement model, whereby you could still use the tiny house, but if members of the community wanted to facilitate that immediate transitional housing requirement, because it's very limited in terms of capacity, you can have a range of different communities within South East Queensland, being able to have tiny house. You could sign up. Yes, I've got a backyard and it's suitable for a tiny house, and then you can then facilities and those wraparound services can then come to each one of those sites, and the tiny house would be located in some backyard that would take on. There'd be a partnership obviously between local government and state government in terms of that transition.
Sorry, I was just going to ask. I think we struggled a lot between the immediate design of how are we using these tiny houses and what are the, the sort of tent city community that needs to relocate and all of the technical details of that. But then there's that high level strategic, it's temporary housing where we're proposing short-term use of underutilised government land, but what's the longer term prognosis, outcome for these people who have, for whatever reason, decided that their best option was to occupy part of the city centre, and then, we're relocating, but we wanted to build that further programming for them to try and, of course, that happens already. We understand that community services provide that transitional housing short term, and then the goal is always for longer term accommodation. But this is just our approach to also reutilising the assets that we purchase for that short term accommodation fix. But that's how it resolved itself.
I guess there's some, in a way that we're sort of looking at, I guess one of the big problems is, I guess that NIM is not my backyard. And we were very conscious that one of the key starting points is to build partnerships with the community that the tiny houses will end up in. So a way of thinking about it is not we're going to build a bunch of tiny houses in this lazy bit of land. In this case, we've built a scenario next to the railway station. But what you think about it is that we want to improve the neighbourhood and try and give uplift to the community, and there just happens to be some tiny houses amongst that mix as well. So I think it was very important for us to consider the interface between people who are sort of transitioning through the community and the community, the permanent community itself. So looking at opportunities, like for example, like little pop-up cafes, places for the kids to play, community gardens and so on, which are a way of sort of bringing this community and this community together. It also may help provide some employment and a way of sort of re-engaging people who might have, for a whole bunch of reasons, find it tough to sort of just get through everyday life and give them a routine and so on. But at the same time, we do need to make sure that there are elements in the design here that give security and a way for people to sort of manage their interactions with the community itself. So it may seem like a very small thing, and we had a bit of a debate about this in our group, but like for example, Lyra and Andrew's little veranda on the side of the tiny house. A lot of the tiny houses you see don't have that transitional space. But it's really important because when you go into the door of a tiny house, you're in the whole room. So you don't actually have anywhere to sort of put the crappy dishes away and so on. So that veranda space is cheap, important sort of space you can put a dining table and so on, but it's that important transition where you can invite people into your personal space, but not into the really personal space as well. So these levels or thresholds of sort of interactions need to be thought about, and it's not just sort of dumping a bunch of caravans out in the middle of nowhere to get the roof out of over their head. There needs to be considerations of these design qualities. So you've got the verandas, you've also can be clustering these sort of little communities together. If there's an existing house, like you can imagine next to the railway, there might be an old timber house there that might not be used, that could be sort of repurposed as a community house. And perhaps there are people with higher needs that could be closer to that common facility, as well as a bit of space, a commons for that actual community that has a sort of interaction with the common community as well.
So I think then we sort of rounded all that discussion up in that implementation plan, which is, you know, stock standard maybe, but just looking at, well, what's those actions that need to help facilitate, you know, some of those outcomes, who's ordering stakeholders and timeframes for that. So obviously we're looking in the phase one for that immediate solution. So timeframes are a bit rushed, and particularly when you're negotiating with state government, you know, how long is a piece of string? But the first, you know, key actions are going to be, you know, that the council, whatever council, make a determination that the city, the tent city, is going to be relocated, and they probably approach state government to investigate a land use agreement to use to access the surplus land. Then looking at, in conjunction with Department of Community and Child Safety and Disability Services, that you know, what does that short-term stage one look like? A 5-year agreement to use the land for short-term accommodation. We looked at that process being perhaps some of the original tenants being from the tent city only need short-term accommodation for a few months, so they move out. Other people are still there for a couple of years while their longer-term accommodation solutions are found. So then, you know, that situation, the vacant tiny houses, can still be reoccupied by other people in need. Obviously, under the idea that it's a 5-year accommodation agreement. So, you know, that might be 5 years, not 10 years. Then, yeah, doing the consultation obviously is one of the big key pieces of the implementation. So, talking to the community in the tent city, talking to the broader community, and having everyone along for the journey. So, obviously, that's a big part of inclusive designing, purchasing, installing, all the landscaping, as well as the tiny houses themselves, and then the longer term stuff, looking at community development officer as, you know, inclusive program or piece of the program.
Very comprehensive. Okay, thank you very much.